Something that has been all over the media, it was about a month ago is when it really started breaking because Rudy Farias, or is it, is it Farias? I think it's Farias.
I think it's Farias, yeah.
It's Farias.
Rudy Farias, yep.
Yeah. Rudy Farias, which his real name is Rudolph Farias, was found. Well, I wanted to, kind of go, because I didn't know about this when it first broke, when he disappeared 8 years ago.
Okay.
I didn't follow this case. I just randomly heard about it when it was breaking all over the news, and I was like, man, this is drama. This is crazy.
I've seen a little bit. It is insane.
I had wanted to cover it on the podcast, but I wanted to have time to be able to dig into it and understand it because I watched his interview, I think the one he did on Fox and also Grizzy Hood News. I watched theirs as well, which there was 2 or 3 of them. Mm-hmm. I think it was 2.
I think Fox was the big one though, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think Grizzy's Hood News, it was the same one. They were Fox and them were there. And then I think it was an ABC one, actually.
Okay.
But the stuff he was saying was, so out there.
It sounds wild, but the whole situation is crazy.
It is. So, on March 6, 2015, Rudy supposedly went to take his 2 dogs for a walk and never came back home. It was around 6 p.m. at night, and one of the dogs came back later that night, but no Rudy. Then the next morning, the second dog showed up, and his mother called police and reported him missing. Now, she then went on to, plead on the news and to other people to help her find her son. It's this long 8 years of her making GoFundMe pages, requesting, private investigators, foundations to help her raise money, them paying for, her travel to go search for him in Mexico. And yes.
I didn't know about that. Oh my gosh.
8 long years of her profiting off of her son being gone. Well, according to Rudy, the real story is he tried to run away that night and came back 2 days later.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea about the financial gains.
Oh yeah, which is what we're gonna talk about that.
I hope there's some civil lawsuits coming out in that situation because this is shady, you guys. This is so crazy.
Well, unfortunately, everything I'm about to tell you, the mother is not being held accountable for any of it. Nothing. There are no lawsuits.
Nothing?
There's according to Houston PD, they're doing an investigation.
Oh my gosh.
There is nothing. Nothing's happening to her besides public scrutiny.
Oh my gosh. Is it because of her connections?
Maybe, which we'll talk about soon. So, the missing flyer poster said that he suffered from some mental health conditions, some physical and mental disabilities, that he wasn't taking his medication, so he was in danger. It also claimed he was 17 years old, and he wasn't. He was 18 at the time of his disappearance. She falsified his, the forms and stuff she filled out and put him as 17, so he would be considered a minor.
No way.
Also that he had an inhaler and he left it at home. Apparently he never had an inhaler.
Trying to make him look like a victim.
All of this stuff is a lie besides the mental health issues. Now, his aunts did come out and say that at the time he went missing, even though he was 18, he had the mindset of a 10-year-old.
Okay.
So there
something diagnosed, do you know?
Well, not that I know of.
Okay.
But he went through a lot of trauma
I
before
agree.
this, a ton. So, and the aunts also alleged, which I watched their full interview, like a part of, I think it was a part of a press conference, where they kind of talked about some history, some backstory, and what they believe has been going on. And they allege that she was physically that she was physically abusing him well before he went missing.
Man.
And one of the aunts even said that, or I think it was actually the niece. It was the niece said that that Rudy's mom's dad had SA'd her as a child. So that this is like, there's a lot of abuse in the history of the family.
Yeah, and it's really common, unfortunately, that abusers become abusers.
I know.
Or abusees become abusers.
It's really strange.
Or the abused
how that
becomes
works.
an abuser.
It can go one of two ways. It can be you either like almost take on the sickness of your abuser and you go on to become one, or so I don't know, like I guess it's like a difference of being a sociopath or not. I don't know, because
maybe
some people learn from it. Like what I think of is like addicts, okay? You have a drunk as like a parent. Some will go on to become addicts, and then some will like stay as far away from drugs and alcohol as they can.
I've always thought, and for you guys that don't know, if you've only started watching us recently, I went through an assault like that when I was a child, like 5 or 6 or 4 years old or whatever. And so that's why this information's relevant and why I'm saying it. But I think it all comes down to whether you work through the trauma or not. Because if you let it be a secret in you, it festers and it turns into rot, dude. And I know that is obviously not how the brain works, but for the most part, that's what we see a lot. You know, people internalize it and feel like they need to keep it a secret because it's embarrassing, even though there's absolutely nothing they could have done to stop it. And it grows into something horrible and disgusting, and they feel like they need to reenact that on someone else. Now, somebody that takes care of that trauma comes to terms with those feelings, understands it's not their fault, have been told by a professional there's nothing you can do, it would have happened no matter what, you know what I mean? And you learn to get over it at that point.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think
it's how
that's
it's handled,
exactly what it is. How you handle it and your perspective on all of it is
Yeah.
really important. I agree. So he was found June 29th this year, and he was seen by
public. The general public
by
and
somebody.
police.
Yeah, somebody saw him and reported it. Originally, the police thought it was like a long-haired woman, but then they went up and they saw it was him. He was sleeping out front of a church. It says a church located
That's
on
right.
76 and Avenue K in Magnolia Park. So he was laying there, and the way they identified him was he had a family member's identification on him. Like an identification card.
That wasn't his?
And not an ID, like saying, if you find me, this is who I am.
What?
Contact this person.
No way.
Isn't that weird?
That is weird. And how old was he at that time?
He's 25 now.
Right.
Yeah, he was just found.
It's strange. That is so weird.
He's sleeping out there. They realize it's him. You know, they contact the mom and, you know, tell the public, and she's all acting like she's so happy and excited. She puts out these pictures, which we can put up here, saying that he's got cuts and, you know, bruises all over him. Come to find out, those are not recent pictures. Those are from before he went missing, when he had a tumor supposedly on his foot that she was claiming he had cancer and trying to get money for that. So, what I think, okay, is that she's been exploiting her child for financial gain for a long time. And when you dig into her history, It seems like she'd been doing this her whole life, exploiting anybody and everybody she can find to get money out of.
I'm curious if you guys think that's what it is.
So when her son was found, okay, she calls Quinell X, an activist leader in Houston, okay? He is the leader of New Black Panther Nation, and he is like a human rights advocate, like activist.
Yeah.
He fights for people against police brutality, like many different things, okay?
Human rights in general.
In general,
yes.
across the board. So she contacts him and says, you know, now that my son's found, I'm afraid that they're going to accuse me of something, that I'm going to be arrested, and I want you here, like when the police come talk to me. And he's like, oh, okay, you know, so he wants to help her because her son was just found, but that was odd.
Yeah.
That she would say that.
Of course.
Like, what are you afraid of getting accused of? Your son was just found. What are you even talking about? So he comes in, you know, and the police, first of all, they didn't even try to talk to Rudy until 8 days later. So they go into Quinell and the mother and an investigator and Rudy. They meet somewhere. I don't know where it was. But when Quinell and the investigator go in there, he's like holding her leg. Rudy is holding his mother, Janie, her leg with a blanket over him. And Quinell, like, you know, is like, hey, buddy, like, we want to talk to you. She's like, he's nonverbal. He can't talk.
What?
Yeah, he can't talk.
No way.
Yep. Oh, yeah, by the way,
that.
Another thing that Quinell said is he had his mother's credit card in his pocket that she had only gotten 2.5 years earlier.
Yeah, I thought that was the thing that stood out when they found him was the fact that he had that credit card. And then they started like, wait, that's weird.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. And he had scars all over his body. Like, he was, like, messed up. Like, he was.
It's a sketchy situation.
So, anyway, he's hunched over with his blanket over him, hanging onto his mother's leg, and Quinell's like, you know, can we talk to you? Like, being gentle, trying to talk to him. Mm-hmm. And he says, like, oh, you're Quinell. Like, I know you, you know? And he's like, oh, you do? And then, you know, they're pushing her and him to, like, get Rudy to talk. And he's like, Quinell's like, well, look, he's not nonverbal. You know what I mean? And the mom's like, well, he'll have a panic attack. No, like, he'll have a panic attack. And the police officer's like, the investigator's like, okay, well, just call us when he's ready to talk and he's doing better. And Quinell's like, wait, she just said that he was nonverbal. And then, like, and now she's saying he's going to have panic attacks. Like, why don't we give him the chance? Like, do you want to talk, Rudy? And he's like, yeah, I do want to talk. And the investigator's like, well, if he's okay with it, then sure. So then they work on getting the mom out of the room, and she's adamant he's going to have a panic attack. Finally, they push her out of the room, and she literally comes back 3 minutes later, according to Quinell, and starts banging on the door. Is he having a panic attack? And they're like, no. And then
I didn't know all of that. That is so crazy.
So they get the chance to talk to him. Okay? And what he says is insane. Like, they spent over an hour at the very least. I think they were there for much longer than that. But it was at least over an hour of Rudy telling them what had been going on. So he tells them that he ran away, he came back 2 days later, and his mom said, you have to hide. You're going to get in trouble. If the police know you're back and that you ran away, they're going to lock you up. You're going to go to jail. So he believes her, I guess, you know. It
sounds like she was already an overbearing mom, though.
Yes.
Like, from there, because multiple people have died at that point, and I think that she was sick, is sick herself.
Right, which we didn't cover. So one thing Rudy says is, like, she's all I had. And the reason he's saying that is because his brother died in a car accident. And apparently from what Rudy says, is he was their everything. Like, he was like a father figure. He helped provide for the family. He was his best friend. He looked up to him. Like, he did everything for him. And when he died, that was a big deal. That was very tragic. And then also Rudy's they say father, I think it was the only father he ever really had, who was in Houston PD, which is where her connections come in, that he actually deleted himself.
Yeah, gosh.
Before the disappearance. This is all prior, okay? This is the trauma.
With how crazy?
And that was after
That
he got caught doing a racketing thing with speeding tickets.
Yep. There was some sort of fraud involved.
There was some kind of sketchiness in there.
Okay. I did hear that. Because also one of the things that I thought about is, look, if she's willing to commit to a crime to this extent, like, is there some question marks with how he left this world? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think he did off himself.
Yeah.
But he was doing something shady, and from her history, she's also very shady.
Yeah.
But anyway, he says, so, you know, my mom's all I had, she's all I trusted, you know, and I also felt like I really had to take care of her because we've been through a lot and everything. Well, there on out, the 8 years, he's hiding from family when they come over. Like, the only family he gets to see is his mother and his grandmother who has dementia. And by the way, the grandmother was trying to tell everybody that she saw Rudy and he was there the whole time. And some of the family started believing her. And the police even came out and looked, and they even talked to Rudy at some points, but didn't know it was him. They didn't know it was him.
I had no idea about that.
They didn't know. He would give them a fake name.
Yes.
And then the mom would say it was her nephew.
Okay.
And
neighbors said that too, right?
Which is insane. Yeah, neighbors hung out with him and like were chilling with him and didn't know that he had been missing for 8 years and thought he was somebody totally different.
I get that. Like, I understand that. And to be fair, it's not neighbors' jobs to, like, be like, wait, is that really your name? You know what I mean? So it makes sense that they would get away with it when you have that kind of commitment,
and how many people these days really live in a neighborhood for more than 8 years?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are people out there, but, like, I just know my experience. I don't know that many people who have lived in a neighborhood for 8 years.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so he had to play daddy, is basically what it was. Is his mom made him be, like, the man of the house and play the, I don't know why daddy, but, because, like, there's no kids in the house but him. Which, it's really odd.
That's what it seemed like, based on everything that I was reading. He had to be the
man of the house, and her partner in life is what it seemed like.
That's what it feels like. I definitely want them to make their own opinion on that, based on some of that evidence, but it does seem like that. No, it feels like that.
Yeah, but that's what was said. I'm just repeating what was said.
Okay.
So, and he said that. Like, he confirmed that it was like he had to be, like, the dad of the house.
I didn't know that.
I watched all the interviews and everything. Quinnell's interviews and Rudy's. So she was making him go to work with her and only getting $60 a week. And he was doing, like, all of her work. So that was one. She made him sleep in the bed with her, and we don't know all of the details. We only know what Quinnell has said about these specific things, because Rudy doesn't seem to want to dive into them, and he really just needs to get professional help and talk to a therapist about all of this.
Absolutely.
So she supposedly, allegedly made him sleep in the bed with her, at some points naked, and involved tongue kissing. And we don't know what else, but Rudy claims there was never intercourse. So she also fed him drugs. Like, even the neighbors said, like, he was constantly messed up on something. They knew he was always under the influence of something. He specifically talked about taking mushrooms, but apparently there was probably more drugs involved, and he's like a full-on addict at this point. She locked him in his room. When he would take a shower, she would pull back the curtain and stare at him, and then take off her clothes and make him wash her. And he said basically he felt like even though he wasn't physically restrained, he felt like he was brainwashed by her, and that she had this negative energy and would, like, project it onto him, and that he felt like he had Stockholm syndrome, that he just wanted to take care of her, and he was like a people pleaser, you know. And
I think it's very possible based on the evidence that I'm seeing, because again, like I think one thing that's really important to point out, and we point this out a lot, you guys, is a human brain is not fully formed until between 25 and 30 years old. And he went through multiple traumatic events where it sounds like he lost the dad or father or man of the house for real, and then the brother stepped in to fill that role to make sure the house was taken care of, things like that, and they lost him. So imagine the trauma the mom had, and then him being the last guy in her life, basically, and she put all of her feelings from her brother and her dad, instead of working through them, onto him.
I know.
It is
crazy.
Strange. It is strange.
I don't know what could... I don't understand that. Like, I believe what it's called is emotional incest is actually the term for the emotional part of it. That's not even a sexual term. Where you treat a child like a partner and you key them in on like adult situations and like supporting you emotionally when you're supposed to be doing that for your child. They shouldn't worry about that at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he tells him all this and that he ran away because he wanted his own life and he was tired of his own personal boundaries being crossed, tired of doing all this work to keep her afloat financially and only getting $60 a week. He wanted a life. He wants a house, he wants kids, he wants a wife. Like, he wants a real, normal person life.
It's funny that's what he's talking about, though. He's not even talking about the most important thing here as an outsider looking in, the emotional boundaries she crossed and crushed between him and their relationship.
Yeah.
Like, he's more concerned about being able to make his own money than, like, the trauma he's had to endure. I think that's a good sign that... Because police had made a comment, I heard, that they weren't sure if they were going to charge him or her. And I'm like, him? What do you mean?
No, they're saying he could have been, like, involved. And I don't feel like he's to blame here at all.
No way.
Which Quinnell also has, like... heavily come out and called out the police department and said they straight up lied because they said that he never accused her of sexual assault. And Quinnell's like, the investigator was sitting there with me. We both heard that. So they're straight up lying. And to say that he had any involvement in her schemes is absurd. Like, this young boy was abused.
Yeah, and I think what's important in that scene, though, just to be clear, because I know I saw some clips, is Rudy said that there was no SA.
He said there was no intercourse.
He said there was no SA, and then the activists started digging, asking questions like, well, okay, well, tell me about this, and tell me about this, and then by the end of that part of the conversation, he was like, look, that is SA. That is SA.
I don't know where you saw that.
It was the activists talking about it.
Oh, okay.
So he gave them details about, like, what you were saying about laying in the bed naked, and, like, her when he would say stop and she wouldn't listen to it. I think that Rudy was thinking, like,
just
SA, yes, had to be this. And then the activist was like, no, like, it doesn't have to be that. That is that. Yeah. That's sexual nature.
Well, get this. Grizzy Hood News was there during this, okay? During this talk that they had. This is not filmed. This is totally private. But Grizzy was there. And apparently after this conversation, they took his mom back and put her in handcuffs and detained her.
Okay.
Okay? Well, the mom starts yelling at Rudy that she basically said, and Quinnell's like, you heard this, right, Grizzy? Like, we all were there. We heard this. And she's like, yeah. She said, you need to change your story, Rudy, or else I'm going to go to jail and I'm going to KILL myself.
I didn't know that.
She's yelling at him to change his story or else she's going to go to jail and she's going to hurt herself. And he apparently cried and said that he didn't want his mama to go to jail. Which may be why he came out in interviews later and said the media's twisting my words, and no, that's not true. There was no intercourse. And he wouldn't go further into it at all. The police ended up releasing her, okay? Even though they detained her, they still let her go. They didn't, and Quinnell was telling the investigators, you need to execute a search warrant on that house. They never did. Still to this day have not. And there's been no consequences to this mother at all yet. They just claim there's an investigation going on. They don't know who they're going to charge, her or him. They claimed that they had no report of SA, which Quinnell came out and called them out on that. Also, when Quinnell was calling them out on that at a press conference in front of the home, Rudy's mom, apparently before he got there, said, yeah, come, like, if you come talk, I got guns. And was threatening him with guns. And he called it out in the press conference. It was like, you don't know who you're playing with. He said, come out with your guns and the police will see who you really are.
That is so wild.
Yeah.
This is so crazy. Like, what blows my mind is the level of commitment. This went on for 8 years.
I know.
8 years. Oh my gosh.
What was also really weird in these interviews is he kept mentioning, like, society and, like, how everything's connected with colors and nanoparticles. Like, he's really out there, which kind of makes sense with him being isolated and being on mushrooms apparently all the time. Like, he has all these, and he's like, we just need to spread positivity, and, everybody's got to stop, being so negative and blah, blah, blah. And he starts talking about how everything's connected to colors. Like, when you see the color red, you think of, like, something bad, but it's actually, like, love. And, like, he goes off on these weird, crazy out there tangents. Yeah. And I think he's just anxiety ridden. Yeah. And doesn't know how to talk to people, and he's been on drugs for a long time, and he's kind of out there. And he's not with his mom right now, as far as I know. He's with an ex-friend of the mom who doesn't agree with what she was doing. That's new. But he feels safe there. And I don't know. Like,
that's new because he was with his mom.
He did go home with his mom, but now he's with a friend who, like, it was the mom's friend, but it sounds like that connection isn't good anymore.
Okay.
So, from what I know, anyway.
They need to charge that lady. It blows my mind that you can essentially take hostage somebody that doesn't have a fully formed brain, somewhat handicap, okay, and dose them with dope, force them to do your work, threaten them that if they don't do this, they're going to end themselves. Like, these are very, very, very serious things. Now, you guys, I have a suggestion for you, okay, while you're listening to this. Flip the genders and then tell me how you feel about it.
Exactly.
What if it was a girl that same age and a dad who did this? And you tell me
people would be burning him at the stake.
You feel about that?
Absolutely. I agree.
I'm curious what you think. Do I think that people would be mad about it? I'm more curious what you think.
So I think the police have said stuff about him being like an adult, and I'm like, dude, if he had the mind of a 10-year-old when he was, like, officially 18, I mean, come on. Like, clearly there's some more going on to this. And you have to wonder, somebody who's being abused and like this, in this way, like, can you really consider them a full-grown adult? I don't know. Like, I don't think so. But a couple more things I want to mention, and then we're going to wrap this up, is that she has taken 8 husbands to court. She is a catfish. She has been running schemes her whole life. Her 7th and 8th marriages are still running concurrent. She has married men when she hasn't even divorced the previous man.
No way.
She's a major catfish online. Like, major. Has multiple accounts of different people that aren't her.
Was she doing that while he was in the house, or did she stop doing that while he was in the house?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I just know people have been digging into her past, and she has a crazy past. Like, I'm telling you, she's a schemer. He even mentioned in one of the interviews that she had him take a bunch of Tylenol PMs and made him go into a hospital and pretend he was ODing.
What?
I think this woman it reminds me of that case of that girl in the wheelchair where her mom was making her pretend she had cancer.
Yeah.
I don't remember her name.
Yep.
There was that movie that came out about it.
Where she ended up ending her mom. Yep.
Munchausen by proxy.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like, I feel like we got some of that going on here.
It could be. I think it's all about like,
it's like
multiple
issues in one, it seems like. And
she just
he did say everything was about money to her. He said it was always money, money, money. The older brother had a life insurance policy when he died that Rudy was the beneficiary of, okay? And according to the life insurance policy, he had to either be dead or missing for 4 years for her to be able to get it.
Oh, that is the total reason. 100%. That's the reason.
It is. 100%.
Oh my gosh. Has anyone else made that connection?
People have talked about it, but I haven't seen people driving that home. Like 100%, that's why she kept this up.
Yes. He said an amazing call out.
He said this all started when he got a speeding ticket at one point, and like she started really like bearing down on him, and then I'm assuming he ran away because the abuse his aunts were talking about.
I mean, the whole thing's abuse. Everything I'm hearing is abuse and control and manipulation and not a healthy relationship between a mom and a son. Like,
she saw an opportunity to get the life insurance money and make money off of people that want to help people. Like the kindness of people's hearts, wanting to donate to a woman whose her child is missing. Like, she even ramped it back up and said he was trafficked to Mexico and stuff and had people take her out there. Like, this woman got money. I'm so curious how much she profited off this. I hope somebody digs into that and finds out how much money she actually made.
She's just a con woman.
She is.
She's trying to compete with what's-her-face, who we covered.
Elizabeth Holmes?
Yes,
but in
Elizabeth
like a
Holmes.
super ratchet way.
Yeah, yep. Different class, right?
Right?
Yeah, this is wild.
It is wild. But she was banned from GoFundMe.
Good.
That's the only consequences she's had so far, by the way.
Good.
But I really want to know what you guys thought about this case. Did we give a good rundown? I'm sure we missed details. There's a lot of convoluted details in there. And I would love to know more about Janie's past, which her name is Janie Santana, if I didn't say that, because I'm kind of thinking I didn't. But
yeah.
I would love to actually dig into more of her.
Yeah.
And I want justice for Rudy.
I do too. And I just want, she's dangerous. Like,
she is.
It's very clear she's dangerous based off of everything that we're seeing here. Like, okay, what's going to happen when a person like that gets into a pinch and they need money? You know, it's not like the long con. It's not like a slow con where she's controlled and playing people. What's going to happen when she gets into a bind? Those are the types of people that are able to do that will end people easily, you know? When you put them in a situation where they feel like that's their only way out, they will pull that trigger. Yep.
I agree. She's incredibly dangerous and an SA'er, I think. Personally, that's just me.
Yes.
But we want to know what you guys think.
Absolutely. So leave it down in the comments below. Let us know what you think. And if we missed anything, and we'll do a follow-up with it, because that is wild. We need to do a background on her.
Yep. Agreed.